thank you very much for attending this session on the library and its new services in the University of the Future. I would like to take just a brief moment to extend my sincere gratitude to Unam and the General Director for extending an invitation to me and to allow me to be part of this group of esteemed colleagues from all parts of the world. A brief overview of my university. We are located in the capital city of Albany. Albany happens to be the capital of the state of New York. If you have never been there, it's a little confusing for most people to think that New York City is the capital. But the university has about 17,400 students. We are a research university, and we have about 4,500 faculty and staff who make up the employees at the institution. So on a given day, we have around 25 to 26,000 people who are affiliated with the university as employees or faculty members. And in this context, I am the Vice President for Information Technology Resources, which also encompass our high-performance computing. And I'm adding those details because it will create a context for you. And previously, I served as a faculty member in information science and decision science. So I'm sharing with you some of the biases that may have also influenced the presentation that I'm about to share with you here. The other one. Wait. Thank you. So sometime between 1899 and 1910, a French artist was by the name of Jean-Marc Coté, was asked to basically paint a picture or an image of what life would be like in year 2000, basically projecting an image or a vision 100 years into the future. And Mr. Coté's imagination, which was influenced and limited by the realities of his time, predicted that in the year 2000, mail delivery will occur through the air. Basically, Mr. Coté is predicting that the postal services personnel will deliver mail to people even on the second floor of their residence. Now remember, back then, being on the second floor basically means that you cannot interact with anybody on the first floor or on the ground. So that prediction back then meant a lot. He also went on and painted another picture to illustrate that sometime in the year 2000, instructional materials will be shredded or broken down into small pieces to the point where those small pieces will then be transferred to students in a classroom over a wire. Now, looking at the realities of where we are today, I think those two predictions have come to be true. We now have mail being delivered to us. In fact, our mail now follows us. Just about every person in this audience carries a mobile device which is delivering mail to you. And then instruction is being delivered online, even beyond the confines of the four walls of the classroom. So this individual, I think, was very futuristic and a visionary of his time. So when we look at the realities that Mr. Coté used back then, as I was preparing for this presentation, I also tried to look at what exactly, or what kind of framework we might use to be able to project into the future when we think about our universities and the services that our libraries currently deliver. I personally and professionally, I don't think that our libraries have become obsolete at all. I believe there is a role, in fact, a more important role for our libraries to play now and into the future. So let's think about where we are as a higher education society now and probably into the future. So the framework that I use here is the social technical framework, which basically espouses an extreme reliance of technology and society, those two factors on one another. One cannot exist without the other. And then I look at some of the problem modeling features that are now emerging in higher education, where we allow our students to have experiential learning while they were still in school, so by the time the person graduates, he or she will have enough experience to be able to get a job. And then taking technology, which is basically influencing most of our lives, from a service into a strategy that can help an individual be successful in their life and into the future and to become a productive citizen. So when I reflect on higher education, now I've informed you I am the vice president for the university, a faculty member, and also a chief information officer. So there are multiple hats that I tend to wear, and I enjoy that. But I also tend to function or operate based on an interdisciplinary model. So when I reflect on some of the trends that we currently see in higher education and where education is going, I've come up with 8, and I'm sure there may be other trends out there that are influencing higher education and ultimately university libraries and their service deliveries. So competency-based learning is one aspect that we need to be very aware of. More and more, many employers are asking students to show up, not to tell you which courses you've taken in school, but what you can do. We have open micro-credentialing. Individuals can very quickly demonstrate their ability in certain areas and fields, can take courses within hours and have their credentials, which allows them to be able to perform certain tasks and get a job. Then we have outcome-based funding. Depending on where you are in the world, some institutions, whether you're an open institution or you still have to pay tuition, elected officials and parents alike are starting to demand that institutions demonstrate the true evidence that students are really learning something and students are having their gainful employability attained while they're in school. So the notion of employability and graduate, when students complete their 4 years or 5 years or even graduate courses, we have to pause and ask ourselves whether we have truly prepared those individuals to be able to become successful. And even more importantly, when the person moves on 5, 10, 15 to 20 years after graduation from an institution, will the person be able to make the same amount of money as their parents, especially those who come from very low-class communities? If we're not able to move those individuals out of the social status, then we as educational institutions may not have really done much for those individuals. Then we have a demographic change. Many years ago, or even 10 years ago, the average age of an undergraduate student in college is normally between 18 and 21. But I think that has shifted in recent years. We now have individuals who are single parents, who are employed, who are taking care of ailing parents, and have multiple other competing interests in their lives. And they're no longer those students who do not have a job and just sit in the classroom. So those individuals have a different, those students have a different need that we as institutions of higher education must attend to or pay attention to. So those are the non-traditional students, some of whom do not even set foot on our campuses because they could be anywhere in the world, taking courses online or remotely. Then we have the impact of globalization. Every student who graduates now is competing not just against their classmates, but they're competing with the market pool, which is all over the world. The work that an individual can perform can also be performed by somebody else in a different city, a different town, a different state, or a different continent. And then the private sector competition. There are certain roles that the private sector is more and more performing that university would normally perform in the past. Normally we try to educate individuals, but now we also have on-the-job training programs that are being encouraged by the private sector. So you have to start wondering where exactly higher education is going and what exactly is the size of the line between higher education and the private sector today. So looking at those 8 trends and looking into the future, the question we often ask, especially as a university, is what is it that employers are looking for? When our students go out and look for a job, what kind of questions are those employers asking them? And I can summarize the trends or qualities that employers are looking for in very simple terms. Employers are looking for individuals who can solve complex problems. Employers are looking for individuals who can interact with other individuals, people who are culturally competent. Employers are looking for people who are authentic in their thinking. Employers are looking for people who have an appreciation for transactional systems, how you can perform data entry, but not just stop there, be able to also extract that information, analyze it, present it, and be able to make decisions very fast. This notion of things that employers are looking for is very important for us, not just for educators in the classroom in the act of teaching, or just for students in the act of learning, or for researchers in the act of making discoveries. But these notions also bleed all the way into the work that the librarians do on the college campus. So what do I think happen to be or should be the new roles that libraries should be performing? Some of them are being performed now, and some others have remained in conversations. And I think we as a collective society should continue to talk about some of these notions so that they become a reality for us. So I'll talk about these topics very briefly. The first one is, so looking at the four themes that you have on the screen here, one being literacy, visualization, integrity, and reproducibility. This is another framework that I'm now working on as a part of a true interdisciplinary approach on our campuses, so that when students walk away, they can have this as part of their portfolio. Look, let's break down the framework itself one by one. We know that students go to the library. We know that students read. But do they really understand what they're reading? And what is the level of their literacy? So in 2009, the Curriculum of Excellence, Literacy Across Learning Principles, basically stated that young people not only need to be able to read for information, but they also need to be able to work out what trust they should place in the information and to identify when and how people are aiming to persuade or influence them. That is very important. When somebody tells you that something is great, you have to be able to pause and ask the person, what does that mean? Those are simple notions that I don't think we have allowed ourselves to be inquisitive enough and to question things as part of our leadership. Librarians do this very well. Librarians do provide the information, and I think the next step is for librarians to ask us to, or to help us to become more inquisitive in our knowledge search. The second part of the framework that I shared with you is for librarians to help us visualize information. Now, the high-performance research computing at my institution reports to me, so I can speak briefly about the notion of visualization. When we talk about visualization, it's easy for any one of us to jump to scientific research or hard sciences very quickly and to think that visualization should only occur in those areas. Yes, it is true. When we have big data, we have massive amount of data, millions of rows of data, quantitative data for the most part. Yes, it is much easier to have a tool, the skills, and the algorithm to be able to analyze the data for four main reasons. You can absorb more information very quickly. You can find patterns and trends in the data fairly quickly. You can manipulate the data much easily. And finally, you can actually draw conclusions from the data very fast. But I don't think we should stop the notion of visualization just at the quantitative level. There are tools and algorithms now to allow us to also find patterns in other types of data, may it be qualitative data, written text, voice recognition, facial recognition, and such. And again, I believe that librarians, being the owners and the guardians of information for many, many centuries, have a role to play here to help us visualize the data that has been at their disposal and under their care for many centuries. Academic integrity is the next pillar of the framework that I'm sharing with you. So in 2011, a number of university presidents, just a little over 1,000 university presidents, were asked about plagiarism or cyber plagiarism, the new version of plagiarism in the digital age. And over 1,000 of those university presidents all believe that cyber plagiarism is increasing. So in 2013-14, I did a research on academic integrity in the digital age. And it was the result of the research was very interesting. Some things that I discovered. One, a great majority of the respondents, over 600, almost 700 respondents to the research, a great majority, about 85% of the respondents, claim that they themselves do not cyber plagiarize. But then almost 80% of the same respondents claim that their friends or their classmates do cyber plagiarize. So one of the conclusions that I was able to draw was that cyber plagiarism has now become part of, or has been ingrained, or it's almost ingrained in our students to the point where they don't see it as a problem for themselves, they only see it in the other person. So in that context, I don't think information or the lack thereof is the problem that we have today, but knowing how to use the information properly, how to cite the information, and how to attribute credit to the source of the information and the provenance of that information is very important for us, so that we can continue to stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us and have produced their scholarship. And the fourth pillar of my framework is what I refer to as research reproducibility. And the NSF has come to define research reproducibility as a researcher's ability to duplicate the results of a prior study using the same materials as were used by the original investigator. On most of our university campuses today, there are many researchers performing investigations either in the hard sciences or in the social sciences. But I don't know if we have a place where we can harvest the code of the work that is being done and to allow somebody else to replicate the same research and to validate the work that has been done or to challenge the work that has been done. There are many implications to this notion in the biological sciences, for instance, because when somebody makes a mistake and the wrong research or wrong results are produced, many of us are at risk. But every time this topic comes up, we hear about the proprietary notion of most of the research that we're doing. So this is a place where I believe information technology professionals, researchers, and librarians can come together to create a repository which will then harvest the code, in fact, to the point where this can become a step into grant applications, where agencies awarding grants may require that the code of the research should be harvested and kept somewhere so that it can be made available to others for various reasons, especially for reproducibility reasons. That notion going forward is going to be very important for us because we have so much information in this day and age, and that we should be able to replicate many of our research much faster and not think that everything should be done as a brand new research. So as I project into the future, what do I see? In my mind, libraries are not obsolete, but libraries should be converted into a center for interdisciplinary studies. And you might ask, what exactly does that mean? I refer to it as a socially intellectual space where people go, learn, have fun, but also in the process, learn to create, learn to collaborate, and most importantly, produce something that advances our collective knowledge. So think about the name of the library of the future, call it Interdisciplinary Studies Center. But with this prediction, or at least as I see the University of the Future and the services that I believe we should be offering, there are some clear implications on the design of our physical spaces, which many of us talk about. The flexibility with which we design our spaces, things as simple as outlets, electric outlets, or even the position of the chairs, the furniture in the room, lighting in a space. All those elements must contribute to or happen to some of the implications for library designs and libraries of the future. But then when we think about students who do not set foot on our campuses, we don't even factor them into the space design. And I don't think we often think about how we should be delivering services to those individuals very well. And some accrediting bodies throughout the US now are asking institutions to demonstrate how they are catering to their students who do not come on their campus. So the design of your information technology infrastructure is very important, because now you're shifting cost from a physical infrastructure to a digital infrastructure, which happens to be your network. And then be able to assist those who don't come on your campus. As you can see here, there's an individual sitting on a pile of hay somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It could be a faculty member, a researcher, or a student. We have to be able to assist that person as if he or she were on our campus. And then finally, we have to be able to retool, retrain, and repurpose our librarians as they are today. The training of a librarian, I think, as it has been, requires some modification into the future. And this is where I think the librarians must play a much bigger role if we as an institution, or as institutions collectively, give them the tools and the empowerment that they need. On that, thank you very much. I think we're going to allow for questions at the end.